What is your biggest I didn't think this through moment? When I was like 7, I was in a hotel where a clown was performing and he asked if any children wanted to go to the front and tell a joke to everyone. I volunteered and excitedly went to the front and realized I had no joke ready, so I just decided to freestyle and said, what do you call a man telling jokes to people in a hotel in Devon, South England, which is where we were at the time. Everyone was just like a clown, but I still didn't know what the hell I was gonna say, so I just said a very boring man. Everyone went like oh wow, and I saw the clown's face drop. I have no idea why I said that. I mean, I was enjoying myself. I just panicked and decided to insult a clown. I was devastated afterwards and apologized to the clown, but the damage was done and everyone in the hotel avoided me after that. I'll preface this by saying I was 14. I stayed over at a friend's house and forgot to bring my contact lens solution. My thinking was, saline is kinda salty, right? So I put my lenses in a cup mixed with water and salt. The next morning when I put one of them in, I was at a performing arts summer camp. Some people there got the chance to put on a show for the rest of the camp at the end of the trip. On the day of the big performances, there was a girl sobbing saying her friend backed out and wouldn't perform with her. She asked if I knew the lyrics to Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On and begged me to sing while she played the music. She looked really upset and I thought I could half-ass it, so I agreed. Thought it'd be easy. Turned out I only knew one line of lyrics, which were also wrong. So, I sang every night in my dreams. I see you. I see only you. That is how I know you. Go on over and over, while the other girl sobbed while playing the recorder, in front of 100 or so other kids and camp leaders. Most cringe-worthy experience from my childhood. TL. Lied about knowing Celine Dion lyrics. Learned never to lie about knowing Celine Dion lyrics. I'm an introvert. Being around people exhausts me. Decided to become a teacher. I tried to pull my broken car down a hill with my working car using only a rope. Now I have 2 broken cars. Lost about $150 in one poker hand. Thinking I had a straight. Asking a girl to marry me after the first date. In year 8 we were doing a drama exercise, where only 3 people would be on stage at any one time, but one had to be standing, one be sitting and one be on the floor. The whole class was there, and at any given moment a bystander could tap one of the performers to switch place with them. In the scenario, there was a girl pretending to be pregnant, when suddenly she erupted in labor. SJ laid to the floor and spread her legs claiming she was about to give birth. None of the other 2 participants interacted with her, I think out of awkwardness. So I took it upon myself to do so. I tapped the participant standing and entered the exercise. I walked up to the girl in labor and said, "Don't worry, young woman. I'm a doctor," whilst rolling up my sleeves and getting really close to her spread legs. The whole crowd, which were laughing, suddenly went silent, and the girl pretending to be in labor just stopped and went wide-eyed. Everyone was looking at me. I must have looked like I was really put my hands down there. I just froze to what seemed like eternity. I had no idea how to carry on this daring act, so we both remained there in silence, with her legs to the side, and me creepily bedding at the waist with my hands out towards her, until her friend ran and tagged herself in, and I walked in silence back to the rest of the class. I still cringe at the moment. TL. Doctor drama class isn't sufficient training to become a midwife. Who likes condoms? I don't. I'm a moron, but my kids like me. I jumped off a moving bus and landed on my face. Not smart. I had shaved, but at my work I saw there was still one hair left to the side of my mouth. I tried burning it off with a lighter and instead burned off half my eyelashes. So on one side my eyelashes were half their normal length. When I was around 3, before I could swim, I was playing in the shallow end of my uncle's pool. Now, like any curious child, a question popped into my head: at what point of the pool would the water be over my head? So I went and tested it out. One careful step after another careful step, trying to make sure I knew the exact moment where standing was no longer an option for me. Well, I never thought about what would happen when I eventually reached the point of no return. And, well, I got there. So, I started to drown. Now here's the thing about drowning. You can't call for help. The water chokes you. No air to make noise can come out. There I was, trying to scream for help and no one could hear it. Apparently, my uncle saw me and thought I was fine because I wasn't making any noise. Lucky for me, my mom knew drowning is a silent killer and snatched me from the clutches of my stupidity. When we were playing tag, and I ran across the road so I wouldn't get tagged. Yeah, kids, don't do that. Having a car smash your leg doesn't hurt, but you'll really wish you hadn't done that. My cousin, and my uncle all thought it would be interesting to see a firecracker explode in water and watch since the fuses were chemical and still went down even in water. It only took about a second after we dropped it into a glass jar that I had the thought, what if it breaks the glass? Sure enough, pop, and glass splinters and tiny partials everywhere. 3 people couldn't put that together that this was a dumb idea. Snowboarding out of bounds in an area where I didn't know the mountain. That should be enough. But it gets worse. So much fresh powder and it's awesome. And then suddenly I'm going off a cliff. I know better than to not pay attention to the terrain. But I got lost in the moment. I dust myself off and chastise myself for being an idiot. I keep going down the mountain and get to a cliff chute. It's pretty narrow. Not much room for error and it's the only option for moving forward. I hear some noise behind me and a skier comes up to me. He's French and speaks with a heavy accent. He apparently followed me because he assumed I was local and he was freaking about this cliff chute we had to navigate. There was no room to carve really, so I dropped down and then waited for him to come out. He dropped in and sort of speed wobbled tumbled out. Didn't plow into the rock walls though. Nobody was hurt, but I really should not have done that alone. To start, and without knowledge of the mountain. For the chute cliff, it was clearly above my skill level, and I'm pretty decent. Could have been much worse. When I was 15, I went to a summer school program. Some kid said he'd pay me $50 to bring a screwdriver to school and unscrew all of the outlets and leave them hanging out, exposing ground wire. As stupid as I was, and as I was only trying to fit in, I did it. I got away scot-free though. Thank God. One thing I'll never do is listen to someone who's taller than me. When I attended my first speed dating event, I decided to wing it with zero prepared material. Really nice day today. Fabulous. Sunshine. Who could ask for anything more? Am I right? Got my hit of vitamin D today. How about you? Excellent. Alright. Having fun tonight? Yes. Thank you. It's true. These events are amazing. Seattle sent its best and finest tonight. And you know, the ladies, they couldn't have been more gracious. It's been an amazing run. One of the most amazing runs ever. The ladies, really, very nice. All of them. No mutual matches and the comment cards were vicious. One woman called me a faker and another said I was vacuous and just said whatever popped into my head. Don't know about biggest, but a pretty big one. Driving around Icikul Lake in Kyrgyzstan trying to find a spot to camp. You can camp basically anywhere, in spring. We're mainly on farmland dirt tracks, and so rainwater has pooled in dips in the track. Have successfully forded several, and coming to a new one think no problem. I got this. Vroom. Plunge into the water and gradually lose traction until we're basically at a standstill. Duck. Throw it into reverse. Gun it. Back into first. Gun it. Basically nothing. I'm faced with having to call the rental company and explain to them that I'm sitting on the roof of their car. That I wasn't really meant to take off road. In a hole in the middle of a field. I regretted everything in that moment. Edit. Definitely meant forwarded not forwarded. I blame my excitement at having a cool story to tell. Eating a ghost pepper with 3 of my other good friends. I love those guys and the video was hilarious. But dear god it was so hot. I'm not accustomed to hot foods, and it completely annihilated my stomach. I felt like I was eating fire. Okay, this was my ex-husband, but he was a d-head, so I'm going to tell it. So, my ex was a PhD level engineer working at the highest technical levels for a defense contractor. He had actually spoken at the UN about some of the stuff he was working on. As much of a D as he could be. He was admittedly a genius. Christmas. 1998 we go to the tree place, pick out the perfect tree, and prepare to take it home by tying it on top of our Honda Accord, which he did by rolling down the windows and running the ropes through the car, which was a great idea except he had tied the door frames shut in the process, and he was not of a size to fit through a Honda Accord window, so we had to undo it and tie it down another way. The look on his face when he went to open the car door was glorious. I was in grade 2. The teacher asked who knew how to dance. There were a couple of girls who took dancing lessons. Back then they were the little girls with curly ringlets and skirts always that bit shorter than the rest of us wore. For goodness knows what reason I stuck up my hand too. The teacher told me to come up to the front of the class and demonstrate. I hadn't a clue what to do, so I kind of pranced around for a few embarrassing moments until she told me to go back to my seat. I definitely hadn't expected her to make me prove it. Starting to write this comment without a big story. I was throwing rocks trying to hit the metal thing on top of the chimney. As I am on my about 105th rock, my dad comes out all pissed telling me I just broke something out front. There are cars out there I thought, and I ran out front. I didn't see anything and went back inside. My mom woke up and had to go to work. She goes into her new Nissan Murano and opens up the sunroof shade and broken glass falls everywhere. When I was 15 I had the amazing idea to build a cannon out of PVC pipe, Gorilla Glue, and duct tape, and use a crushed up model rocket engine as gunpowder. Thankfully it didn't explode, but it did send a ball bearing hurtling at terminal velocity into the park across the street and sound like a rifle going off in a residential neighborhood. I helped my friend's family put together a metal fire pit, and stayed and had the first fire in it with them. I wanted to take the lid off the pit and put more wood on, but I couldn't find the fire poker. I thought, man, I'll just do it quickly. Can't be too bad, right? So I pull it off and set it on the ground quickly and start putting wood on the fire. My friend, who was in his house, comes back and by then my fingers are starting to feel tingly. Turns out there was a nice dark line across the tips of 2 or 3 of my fingers. He drags my hand over to this pool and slams them into the water. But as we're walking over, I notice that the fire poker is under my arm. TLDR, couldn't find the fire poker right under my arm. Got burned trying to lift the lid to the fire pit. Getting a degree in linguistics, it worked out. But there was a minute where I was like, what the duck did I just do? When I was younger, I was holding one of our cats in my arms like a baby and petting him, as I would frequently do. He was pretty happy. Then it occurred to me that it would be hilarious to blow a raspberry on my cat's tummy, and I did. The cat latched onto my face with all 4 paws and just held on with its claws. It was at this point that I realized I had not thought this through. I was considering my options. Either drop the cat and let him take my face with him, or just wait until the cat let go. I ended up standing there, bent over with a cat latched onto my face for about 20 seconds or so before he finally let go and I was able to put him down. Needless to say, I learned my lesson. I impulsively grabbed a boat anchor and dove in to get deep fast. It worked way too well, almost died. Working on a laser printer, I was taking it apart and wanted to understand what the different boards did. I was like 15. So I plugged them in one at a time to see what changed. While the printer was plugged in, there are spots on the power board that are live at 1000 plus volts. My left hand touched one of them while my right was holding onto the metal case. It took me about 5 seconds to realize what happened because the shock put me offline for a moment. Pretty sure I very nearly died. The shock came from a capacitor. Could easily have given a lethal pulse. I once was using a kayak on a river with strong currents where I'd never been before. I hadn't thought about how the currents get more intense the closer you get to the dam. Before I could pull away, I got drawn in, but managed to break away after lots of work before going over one of the spillways. After that, I never went near a dam again, not even with a motorboat. My sister had an exam on a weekend a few years back and she was worried because she had no one to babysit her children for about 5-6 hours. My parents were out of town and her husband was driving her to the exam, which was about 2 hours away. I decided to help her out and told her I'd take care of them. One of them was an extremely mommy attached 4-year-old and the other an even more attached 2-year-old. They were calm for about 14.2 seconds before the wailing began. Spent the next 5 or so hours convincing them that my sister will be here any second now while trying my best to calm them down. Didn't work. I've always had very long hair. When I was 14, it was completely healthy and past my ass. So, I decide to let my sister give me a perm. So, it comes out and my hair shrinks, which I didn't know would happen. So, I go into the bathroom and start brushing it out. My mom walks into the bathroom and screams, "What have you done?" My hair was so ducking big and frizzy. She had to take me to her friend who owned a black hair salon and she almost wept having to cut off my hair to my shoulders and relax it. Never forget. Once I set wheat storage on fire. It was in driest form. Right before they had gotten grains out. I just wanted to fire around 10 pieces but forgot that it catches fire quickly. Fire found its way to burn a lot. It took 15-20 local people hard work to control it. Farmers suffered a lot of loss and yet gathered courage to forgive me. Well, I had the flu really bad. And I had diarrhea for 2 days. One day I'm enjoying a coffee and lo and behold I feel a gassy rumble. I leaned to fart and instead sharted. I did not think that one through at all. Edit. Spelling grammar. I accidentally told these students at the school I work at how to get past the guard dog. 11 years old. Took a wooden baseball bat and swung against one of those large bouncy balls to try and smack it some distance. It didn't move, but the bat swung back perfectly into my mouth and hit my front permanent tooth out in one clean piece. I spit it into my hand and wondered for a second why it didn't look like any of the other teeth I'd lost, but instead had a large cone-shaped top to it, the root. I went inside to tell my mom. And I only started crying when I thought about how I was going to look like a toothless hillbilly the rest of my life. I guess I can tell people I play hockey. I remember sobbing. My mom called a family member who was a dentist, and they instructed her to put the tooth in some milk and haul ass to the dentist. I remember being slightly annoyed that we had to leave because Doug had just come on TV and I wanted to watch. We got to the dentist and he was able to put the tooth back in, scrape off the back and pack it with some filling. I had to go back every 3 months for a year and have this redone. And for the first 6 or so months I had to wear a wire across my top row to hold the tooth in. At the year mark, I had a root canal done and have had no issues since. TLDR. Swung baseball bat at bouncy ball. Bat bounced back and smacked out my front tooth. When I was a kid, I got hungry and figured I'd heat up a frozen pizza in the oven. I didn't take the plastic wrap off the pizza before cooking it. 0/10 would not eat or breathe its fumes again. I know this is very mundane. One time when I moved, I decided to pack and load everything myself. Never again. It took 6 days. Also, it is very hard to move a couch solo. The first time I got a bill for my student loans after college. When I got the toast from the toaster with a fork. I was in charge of planning and directing a 5K, so I reserved the location, created the race route, talked to the local companies to invite them to table at our event, got sponsors for the prizes for runners, and talked to food companies to give us fruit and food for the day for runners, created an itinerary for where everyone needed to be and what they needed to do by the hour. Logistics wise, it was spotless and I thought everything through, until a runner comes up to me on race day while we are setting up and asks, "Excuse me, where are the porta potties?" Crap. Tried to pet a wild buffalo. Didn't die. Probably almost died. My older sister and I were at a hotel, and, being the good and quiet little kids that we were, we entertained ourselves by trying to figure out the coffee area while our mum checked us in. We'd never had coffee before, so my older sister decided we would try a little bit. Of course, we had no idea what the different types meant, and children are incredibly sensitive to bitter tastes. She handled it well by just spitting it into the nearby trash can, but I completely flipped out and threw my hands up, seeing as the cup was still in my hand. This caused hot coffee to splash across my face. Now the inside of my mouth was burning and tasted terrible. My face and hands were burning, and I didn't dare open my eyes to see where I was going in case the coffee hit there. 2. Cue me falling against the trash can and onto the floor, screaming while my mum comes running. Moral of the story: kids, don't drink mysterious hot liquids. I was adjusting the carburetor on my truck to get the idle right. The biggest issue occurred when it was in gear, so I blocked the tires and dropped it in D. Adjusted the carb until it purred pretty like. Then I revved the engine with the accelerator cable and ran over myself. This happened when I was like 15. I was running through some grass and tripped. Now, I did not trip enough to fully fall down at first, but rather just enough to be off balance enough that I was guaranteed to fall in a couple seconds. So I thought to myself, hey, if I run faster, my feet will catch up to the upper half of me and I'll be back upright. So I kept running faster and promptly plowed my face into the ground.